I don't understand why people bag on psyllium. I think there's this common misconception out there that because it's a fiber, it might kick you out of keto. No, there's a large argument that shows that psyllium can actually improve a ketogenic diet, ranging from the gut microbiome all the way down to where you distribute fat on your body. Literally, where you store fat can be changed via psyllium consumption. So psyllium is a soluble fiber. Usually you'll find it in things like Metamucil and these fiber supplements. Okay, that's fine, but you can also use it in baking. Like my wife uses it all the time when she makes keto bread. It's easy to get psyllium in on a keto diet. Hey, before we get into the science, please do hit the red subscribe button. And real quick, if you want to check out a cool kind of dark chocolate, there's a company called Cacao Batulia. It's a dark chocolate, but it comes from like a lighter, creamier bean. So it tastes like milk chocolate, even though it has all the polyphenols and everything of dark chocolate. It's really, really interesting stuff. I'll throw a link down below if you want to check them out. I want to start with something really interesting that shows that psyllium might have sort of this interventional property to help people that have a disrupted gut microbiome. Maybe it's because you consume a lot of artificial sweeteners and your gut biome's a little bit messed up. Maybe your gut biome is messed up because you haven't been sleeping well. Maybe your gut biome is messed up because you had to take some antibiotics. It happens, right? So it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means we should correct this, right? Well, here's where the science is cool. So the study that was published in the International Journal of Molecular Sciences took a look at 8 healthy participants and 16 constipated participants, and it gave them 7 grams of psyllium fiber 3 times a day for a week. That's a hefty amount, but it's not unreasonable. Okay, here's what they found. The healthy group didn't see a whole lot of change in their microbiome. They had a slight, like a modest improvement, like a little bit more diverse microbiome. But the unhealthy people that were constipated saw a huge improvement, not only in their symptoms, but their gut microbiome. So healthy people saw kind of a result, but people with a disrupted gut biome saw a tremendous improvement, which tells me that it almost has this like interventional like property to help people that have gut dysbiosis. But what's cool is that there was a larger amount of what are called butyrate producing bacteria. Now butyrate is a short chain fatty acid that's produced by our gut bacteria. So if we have a small amount of gut bacteria, then we don't produce as much short chain fatty acids, which doesn't sound like it matters much. But the more short chain fatty acids you produce, the more ultimately fat loss you can have, okay? It sends a better signal. It also ends up making all kinds of different processes occur that are similar to ketones. In essence, short chain fatty acids help ketone production. So it was just wild that less diverse microbiomes were more susceptible to change, which makes sense though. There's room for improvement. But does that mean that healthy people with a perfectly balanced gut don't get a benefit from psyllium? No, they absolutely do. You get it in different ways. Okay, check this out. It turns out that psyllium consumption can affect your levels of oxidized LDL cholesterol. So LDL cholesterol is not that big of a deal when it's floating in the bloodstream. It's doing its job, but when it becomes oxidized is when it becomes a problem. Well, it turns out that psyllium slows the absorption of cholesterol just enough that it makes it so that that doesn't get oxidized as much. So you have a less oxidized cholesterol. This is great for long-term keto people that are consuming these fats and are concerned about their cholesterol levels. But I think the coolest part for me is this PLOS-1 study that took a look at fat distribution. If you could take like a perfect scenario where you didn't lose weight, you didn't gain weight, but you at least could like reallocate where the fat is, well, you'd really want to be moving fat away from the visceral region, okay, that's like the pot belly type fat, and moving it into other areas where it's less harmful. Visceral fat is not good, okay? Lots of reasons why we want to lessen our amount of visceral fat. Well, the study that was published in PLOS-1 is pretty interesting. It found that just 6 grams of psyllium per day not only changed the oxidized cholesterol levels in the body, but also changed the amount of visceral fat. It improved the ratio of the types of fat, of where our fat was stored, which is wild. And when you start looking at the mechanism, you can kind of see why. Because there is a study that was published in the Journal of Phytotherapy Research that was a meta-analysis, took a look at 8 studies with over 350 participants, and it found that if you consume psyllium on the daily, you had a reduction in your fasting glucose, you had an improvement in your HbA1c, and you had an improvement in your triglyceride levels. All of these things are associated with visceral fat. If you have high levels of fasting glucose, well, that indicates that your liver is generally going to deposit that glucose through what's called de novo lipogenesis, where it creates new fat and stores it in the visceral region. Now, I am jumping to conclusions a little bit, okay? Correlation does not equal causation, but if we see an improvement in visceral fat, it kind of makes sense that it has to do with less de novo lipogenesis occurring at the liver level. All of that Greek simply means that since psyllium is affecting our blood glucose in a very good way, it is potentially affecting where we store our fat. Huge benefits. So if you're doing keto and you already feel like you have a balanced gut biome, you still get a benefit out of using psyllium. So I'm not saying you need to go out and use it every day. I'm not saying you have to use it as a fiber supplement. I just feel out of all the things that are out there that we can use in our diet to get more fiber, psyllium seems like a very interesting, powerful way to do that, because it's not going to grow our gut bacteria in such a way that it's just like overwhelming. Now, you might not want to throw a bunch of like tree seeds into your backyard if you have a perfect view, but you might want to throw some tree seeds into a forest that just burnt down, right? The point is that you don't always want to have this overwhelming growth of bacteria, but there are some situations where you definitely want that growth to happen so that you can have that balance again. That's where it just is kind of interesting. It seems like psyllium has that role. So at the end of the day, I just give it a check mark as a Thomas approved item. As always, I'll see you tomorrow.